The question I had for you, I have two questions actually. The first one is South Africa today. You're a CEO in South Africa, an active CEO in the country. A lot of what is going on in the country impacts you, especially being a big organization, thousands of employees. So what are the challenges? What are the issues that a CEO in South Africa would be facing that are different from a CEO in Australia, in the UK, or elsewhere? That's the first one. Secondly, specific to the industry in which you operate, consulting. There's been stuff happening. Accounting. I'm an accountant myself. There's been Zondo Commission. There's been challenges in as far as what audits are, So maybe also just give us a perspective or a window from your from the top, right, of the consulting. I wouldn't call it a pyramid, but what's happening there? Yeah.
Absolutely love that first question, by the way, Casey, for the simple reason that I strongly believe that in South Africa, we breed and produce some of the best leaders you can find anywhere on the planet. Leaders, CEOs who go on and do absolute wonders in other countries. Why is that? For the very reason of what you're asking. Because of the very different type of challenges that a leader has to contend with by virtue of operating in South Africa and on the African continent more broadly. I think the type of leadership training and development we get on the job builds a significant degree of resilience. I think we don't give ourselves as South Africans and Africans not nearly enough credit for how innovative and creative as what we are. And I mean, that cuts across all spheres of life, right? I remember speaking to an ex-partner who was from the UK, who had come and worked in South Africa for a number of years. And he said, and we were talking about his experience, and he absolutely loves South Africa. And he said, Dion, the one thing that I love the most about South Africa is that there was no challenge that's too insurmountable, right? And he even referenced the old adage or Afrikaans saying of "a boer maak 'n plan," just to bring to life, even you know what that means, in that there's always a plan that can be made for whatever problem, right? And that is the capacity that we have as South Africans, and that is why I believe we create such fantastic leaders and CEOs. And so even with the challenges that we face today, from load shedding to high unemployment, to not having the right type of skills that we are looking for, which is a global phenomenon, by the way, to frustrations in terms of crackling or crippling infrastructure, and some of the things that we wish government would do more effectively, but are struggling to get those things done. All of those things require leaders and organizations in this country to be extremely self-sufficient, creative, agile in terms of how we make decisions, in terms of how we course correct in the various strategies that we develop and adopt. Because if you don't, then you know what, somebody else will eat your lunch. So I think the mindset of a South African CEO is very much influenced and informed by the very challenges that you reference in your question. I think challenges are important to build resilience. Challenges make us a lot tougher internally than what I see in other leaders. In my role, I have the privilege of interacting quite a bit with fellow senior partners and CEOs of other territories or countries of the PwC network around the world. And very often they can't relate to how we actually run a professional services firm on the African continent, given the challenges that we have to contend with. But for us, that's like normal. That's life as we know it, right? And so it is that different mindset and the impact of the environment where you come from. If I move on to your second question, Casey, about consulting, accounting, auditing, professional services more broadly, you are absolutely right. When you think of the phenomenon such as state capture or corruption, certainly we as a profession haven't always done ourselves proud in how we have behaved. There were a couple of years that are certainly not our proudest moment, and that's been a fantastic and key learning for us as a profession. The reality is that for the longest time, the accounting and auditing profession in particular has been seen as the very beacon and custodians of all things trust and ethics related. But guess what? Auditors, accountants are also human, right? And so we see that there is this societal shift that we've seen over time, whereby as human beings, people find it easier and easier to rationalize it in their own minds, to do something that deep down they know isn't correct, as long as nobody else is looking, as long as I'm not found out at the end of the day. So we've had to do a lot of work, spend a lot of time and resources to invest in reminding ourselves who we are as auditors, as accountants, as consultants even, and the role that we have to play in preserving and protecting the public interest. It is extremely difficult work to do, Casey, and work that raises very important questions, such as who is responsible for teaching and inculcating ethics in society? Are ethics taught in the home when you teach a young child, a toddler, a baby, what is wrong or right? Do all parents do that with the same degree of consistency? And what happens if the answer to that question is no, right? And what causes a child who seemingly comes from a good background to grow up but then to change throughout their lifespan into somebody who's not that ethical? I've spoken a bit to public sector failures in the form of state capture and corruption. What about private sector, right? Oftentimes in a country like South Africa, because generally negativity is normally attached to the public sector, we tend to think that everybody in the private sector is good and perfect, right? But with examples such as Steinhoff and one or two others, we've seen that there are plenty bad actors in the private sector as well. And so all of us are required to stand back and think and consider who we are deep down, what we are about, what is at the core of our value sets as individuals, and what responsibility do we have to always make sure that we do the right thing. So these are the issues that we as a professional services firm and part of that profession are grappling with, Casey. These are things that go to the very heart of building trust and being trusted ourselves.